Hello and welcome to WEC Talk, the podcast series from the FIA World Endurance Championship. I'm Martin Haven. In this episode, Ben Turner from Motorport Games tells us all about preparations for July's Le Mans 24-hour virtual esports race. We catch up with Jota's Antonio Felix Da Costa to talk sim racing, Le Mans and the WEC. In the Beckett briefing, Louise brings us up to speed with the format changes for this year's Le Mans 24 Hours. But first, the man overseeing September's Le Mans race, the LMDH Le Mans Hypercar Convergence, and much, much more. ACO President Pierre Fillon. Monsieur President, how are you?
Fine, I'm very well, thank you.
And very busy, I imagine. Normally, this would be such a busy time, but it became obvious quite early that June and Le Mans wasn't going to happen. So how did you arrive at the mid-September date that you chose?
Early on, we established that our main concerns were first to hold our events, and second, to help cushion the economic blow for all involved in motorsports. Our overriding priority is to host our races while maintaining the safety of our competitors, partners, and spectators. So we didn't delay postponing the 24 hours of Le Mans. As I've said before, we always work hand in hand with our competitors, federations, and governing bodies. We monitor the situation closely, so we are always prepared to adapt. The schedule can still change at any time. We chose September because we knew that lockdown would last several weeks and that restrictions would be lifted progressively. We made sure our choice fitted in with other major sports and international events. The Tour de France and the French Open will take place in September too, not to mention other FIA championship races. We also had to consider availability and possible travel restrictions for teams, partners, and spectators from abroad. Holding the 24 hours of Le Mans in September meant we could hold the 24 hours of motorcycle on the Bugatti track in August. A 3-week turnaround is short but manageable for ACO staff, volunteers, and suppliers. Having a date a few months away gives us all something to aim for.
As you said, things are possibly going to change. Do you remain confident that we will have a Le Mans in 2020? Could it maybe be run behind closed doors with teams, marshals and officials only at the track?
You're right. While we are committed to our cause, to finding solution, monitoring situation and contributing to decision-making concerning guidelines, not everything is up to us. We concede that. However, we do have values to uphold, which include keeping everyone safe and not making things even harder for medical staff. So the scenario we are working to at the moment is the 24 hours of Le Mans with the usual crowd, but we are also considering other options, such as fewer spectators or none at all. We are exploring all the possibilities. As organizer, it's part of the job. Government guidelines are there to be followed. In France, lockdown has only just been lifted, and we have no idea how the situation is going to evolve in the coming weeks. The government has suggested that events could take place behind closed doors until the end of August. So we are confident that by the 24 hours of Le Mans in late September, there will be fewer restrictions.
Well, that's very encouraging indeed. What about health and safety measures? Obviously, you have a huge health and safety program for the race itself. What else have you had to think about in that area?
We've been working on this issue for weeks now. First, to ensure a safe workplace for ACO staff, and then to reopen the 24 Hours of Le Mans Museum, the karting track, and the Porsche Experience Center. We've put up signs, laid out a one-way system for people and cars, set up systematic temperature controls, provided staff with 2 masks per day, and hand sanitizer, and distributed our guidelines. We'll be scaling up that operation as we progressively open our premises to the public and eventually to crowds of spectators. This is essential, and our processes are tested and improved all the time.
The ACO's got a A huge presence in the city of Le Mans. We understand that you've been making several contributions to the health and to the medical services of the conurbation at this time. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the ACO has been able to do?
Yes, the Automobile Club de l'Ouest and our circuits are part of the makeup of Le Mans. Most of our employees live in the city. Many of our volunteers are members of medical professions or emergency services who are in the front line battling against the virus. It's our turn to help them with what we have. It's only natural. As a doctor, it is all the more important to me personally. We have contributed to the cause in several ways by donating masks, protective glasses, mob caps, and lanyards, all of which help protect medical staff in local hospitals, clinics, and care homes. We sent all the equipment, especially respiratory heads, from our on-site medical center to the hospital as soon as the medical emergency was announced. We also provided barriers to help coordinate traffic flow, and our regional offices offered their help to the local governments with transport if necessary. That's just a few ways in which the ACO has helped pulling together in the spirit that defines us. Teamwork comes naturally to us.
Well, let's talk about something a little more positive than the pandemic. We were expecting changes in the superstructure at Le Mans. So the temporary garages, 61 and 62, that we saw last year were due to be made into a permanent fixture. Are there any other changes to the track or to the infrastructure of the circuit that have happened since last year's race?
Yes, we have officially accepted 62 teams for this year's race. Both garages that were added last year remain operational, so everything went well last year, so there was no reason not to keep them. There have been a few changes to the circuit this year. I'm sure that spectators will appreciate the Don Panos Bridge, which takes pedestrians from the main gate to the Dunlop curve without having to cross the road. It also offers some great views of the track. We have other more ambitious changes, but they will be ready in time to mark the centenary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1923. So it's too soon to say more.
Always nice to keep people guessing. But there are changes to the format of the weekend, or there were due to be anyway, changes to the format of the weekend. So what's going to be different for this year's Le Mans for qualifying and hyperpole?
So you know that the 24 Hours of Le Mans is a marathon, not a sprint. But both cars and drivers are able to obtain amazing speeds on our 13-kilometer circuit. We felt it was time to give teams the opportunity to show off their talents in a celebration of pure speed. The hyperpole was designed with that goal. Everyone will be on tenterhooks in the first qualifying session, and the Thursday night hyperpole session will be a fantastic show with the 6 fastest teams in each of the 4 categories out on track. It's a great way to highlight mechanical and driving skills, speed, precision, dexterity, and concentration.
An open Le Mans all to yourself, that is going to be a mouth-watering prospect for every driver. The ACO and IMSA recently announced the latest plans for the new LMDH regulations. So you've updated the roadmap for the future of top flight prototype racing. How important is this convergence of the rules between the two huge sporting bodies?
In fact, I'm proud to say that despite the pandemic, we have been able to push on with this project, and the last few days have been particularly fruitful. And with IMSA, we presented the first technical regulations for the category, and with the FIA, we announced that WEC regulations would be adapted to bring the LMH and LMDH classes closer together. In the space of a few days, endurance racing made huge progress in very real terms. New manufacturers have welcomed the project, no doubt, because it is perfectly in step with the times, combining a high standard of competition with sensible budgets and sustainable development. Given the interest, competitors evidently share our vision of the future of motorsport and the role of our discipline within it.
The Le Mans hybrid rules have been modified to make them more cost efficient and to allow convergence between Le Mans Hypercar and Le Mans Daytona Hybrid. So are we now looking at a new dawn in sports car racing?
Yes, I think it's a new page that we will write in the next years. You know, the weight of the LMDH was 1,100 kilo. The engine powers was 585 HP. And in LMDH, it was something different. And we work with IMSA and FIA to align the two categories. So LMDH and LMH will have the same weight, the same power, and the same aerodynamic. So we will be able to have a perfect balance of performance between the two categories. And in the same time, this category is very low cost, very high performance, but at a very reasonable cost for this category, for this level of competition. So I think we have the perfect rules for the future to attract a lot of manufacturers, especially after this crisis.
Well, Monsieur le Président, I know you have an awful lot of work to do between now and September. Thank you so much for your time. We wish you and everyone there at the Circuit de la Sarthe the best of luck and look forward to seeing it all unfolding in September.
Yes, we are waiting for all of you in September in Le Mans. And take care.
Time now for the Beckett briefing, catching up with our Louise Beckett. And Louise, very interesting stuff from the president of the ACO, Pierre Fillon, about how much is going on at the moment as we head into September's Le Mans 24 Hours.
Absolutely. But I mean, obviously, everyone agrees with why they're doing it and they made a good call early on. But it's interesting to hear just all the different factors they have to consider. You know, we don't necessarily think about those things. So it's nice to hear from Pierre about that. But obviously, first of all, we always knew that the start time was going to be different this year. But we've had that in the past. So effectively that's 1 hour difference. They're still going to have to run, aren't they, that 2 o'clock 3 o'clock anyway, because it's 24 hours. But I think the bigger thing and the more variables that are going to be challenging the team, which obviously they don't like because they like everything to be planned out, is the time of year. That's going to be a big difference from June to September. You know, obviously it's going to be cooler. We're going to have different amount of hours of sunlight time. I was looking at the sunrise sunset times. There's a 2 hour difference between June and September. And that's a fair amount for them to be dealing with. The tyres obviously are going to be softer compound, which we know. We've spoken to the manufacturers about that already. Also, let's think about some of the profiles of the cars. Some of their DNAs, some of them do work better in cooler conditions or possibly rain. We can always know that. We know that some of them perform in different ways in different conditions, as the tyres do. They find their own at different temperatures. And also, if they are going to be driving more night hours, then that's not something the team developed or tested for. We know that Toyota have got their testing in July. That's quite different to September. And going back to your strategy, does that mean we're going to see more AM drivers starting the 2020 24 Hours of Le Mans? I think so. Just speaking about that, the tyre element as well, we did say that it's going to reduce pit stop times, possibly by around 17 seconds. Pit stops are going to be reduced by if they don't have to change their tyres.
And that's something I'm sure that all the teams are very keen on, because obviously you go faster if you're on the track than if you're in the pit lane. And always the winner is the car that spends the least time stationary. So everything that the tyre companies can do and everything the teams can eke out of that is going to be a bonus. What it might mean, though, is some really heavy duty donkey work for some of the drivers if they're looking at quad stinting tyres as a routine. Even prototype drivers are going to be in the car for 3 long hours, and physically and mentally that's enormous.
It really is, yeah. And then Hyperpole, obviously, as Pierre did mention, And you know what I loved him saying? And I wrote it down when I listened to him. Fantastic show, because that's exactly what I thought. It's going to really build the tension for those top 6 to be out on track, battling it out, seeing who can be fastest. And for TV, for us, Martin, oh my, that is going to be one session to watch.
It really is, it's something very special for Le Mans. It's never happened before, and it's going to be for all 4 classes as well. So there's several elements here. First of all, a lot of cars, a lot of teams will normally spend all of qualifying and free practice setting up to win the race, not to win pole. So there's a little dynamic there. You've got to, if you think you've got a car that can claim the class pole, you've got to spend at least some time doing empty tank runnings to try and get into that top 6 in your class. And if you do, and the car is going out in the top 6, you've got to spend a little bit more time thinking about how to get it absolutely perfect for qualifying. And then you've got to decide which driver. Now,
do you think they're going to do paper, scissors, stones? I hope so. I hope that's how they work it out.
they're going to have to do something. Actually, wouldn't it be great if a team had 3 drivers, helmets on, ready to go, car on the apron, rock, paper, scissors, you're out, rock, paper, scissors, you're in. There we go. There is a team that will do that.
I'm going to make sure there is.
But I mean, in all seriousness, the focus will be on one man.
Yeah.
It will be full exposure, no
Absolutely.
hiding place.
Absolutely, there's going to be a lot less traffic on track, but also it's going to be the highest caliber of drivers that are out on track. So there's no excuses now.
Which is exactly what drivers want. They want to be able to lay it on the line and to get out of the car and go, I did that. Would you take a look at it? And if we're talking about maybe the fastest Le Mans ever, are we talking about maybe the fastest qualifying laps we've ever seen in all of these classes? If it's dry, we almost certainly should be.
We've got a long summer to wait until we find out.
I'm joined now by Ben Rossiter Turner, who's the head of esports at Motorport Games in what I guess, Ben, is a very busy period.
Yeah, that's right. It's getting a bit crazy. We're working towards this huge project that I think everyone has heard about so far right now, and to essentially reproduce or recreate the magic, the spirit of Le Mans in the virtual world, and that comes with a lot of different logistical challenges, but logistical challenges nonetheless compared to the real thing. And it's an exciting project. I think it's quite visionary, and we're going to see something quite special, I think, in just under a month's time.
Motorsport Games, you've got a lot of background in setting up events, in running events. What's the most rigs you've ever had in one room at one time?
That's a good question. Probably, I think, the Autosport show this year, we had 12 on the stage and then a further 16 elsewhere. So 28, I suppose, in total, but not all in the same race, only 12 in the same race in a physical event, I guess.
What is the biggest issue when you are creating a huge esports event?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Actually, we have different challenges for an event like this online compared to maybe the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final last year, getting people to the same venue. That was a lot of travel arrangements and sporting, but this is now communicating across 200 drivers who are not in the same time zone, who have different hardware requirements, who perhaps aren't quite so sure about how to set up their computers, and therefore we have to give technical assistance. So there's a lot of technical things to work through. It's a slightly more complicated system using rFactor 2, which is a very high-end professional simulation product that you can use from your own PC. Obviously, it needs to be of a certain specification, but actually there's a lot of works with the servers and to ensure that they will have liveries and the sponsors represented correctly as well. And then the communication thing, like I mentioned before, is super critical. So making sure that we have everything in a easy to read, easy to understand format because we've got different nationalities, different languages, different time zones, like we said before. That all sort of comes to a head when you have, if we have 50 teams, we have 200 drivers, which is certainly the biggest online esports event that I've had to coordinate. So it's going to be interesting and fun, of course.
When you go to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the ACO, the governing body, and the FIA also have a vast array of race direction staff, of people who are working in the pit lanes to make sure that pit stops are safe and legal and all of that. So what's your crew behind the scenes? How big a crew are you going to have working on this?
In all honesty, it kind of depends on a little bit on travel restrictions. As you mentioned before, there is a Paris studio where we hope to do this from, a TV studio. So my, department is broken into a couple of different segments. And one of those being sporting, which I tend to head up completely, the sporting side of things. That the sporting, we're going to have officials from the ACO and WEC to help out and make those rules, make sure they work from both sides. So what we have normally in an esports sense, and also what they would normally have in a real world sense, and making sure that rule book makes sense in total. And also then to referee the pit stops. I know that sounds crazy because you'd assume the software itself would be able to handle it, and it can, but we want to make sure that things like driver time, minimum, maximum driver times are adhered to. So that's one perspective. So we'll have 4 people on sporting throughout the 24-hour period, and then also the other side I mentioned in our department is the broadcast side of things. And in this scenario, we're going to be working really closely with the TV production studio, mixing the game feed on our side before it goes to the TV studio, and then out to the rest of the world after the audio from the guests and the talent is added on top. So it's quite a tricky operation. There's quite a few people involved, and we all have to do it in a socially distanced and safe environment as well.
One of the things that esports games are not designed to do effectively is be broadcast. Are there changes you need to make within the structure of the game? Is that possible in such a short time space?
We've actually had to do, I think, 23, 24 broadcasts on 6 different games or platforms, and each of them have certain things and some idiosyncrasies or certain elements that make it challenging to work from a broadcast perspective. So there's a lot of different things to work through. Our factor is pretty good on that sense. But there are things that our team have learned working closely with linear broadcasters, so TV. For example, if you were doing a digital broadcast, you would always do that at 1080p high definition. It's the same for linear. However, you have to put it out at 50 frames per second interlaced. So then working out what the best game settings are to work at 50 frames per second is kind of challenging, because it's not designed necessarily to do that in that way. So that's been a bit of an adjustment for us whilst we get used to this TV broadcasting workflow. It is a challenge, and I think after this, I think a lot of game developers, including Motorport Games, to be clear, we also do develop games, and there's some in the pipeline. There's some adjustments that game developers will now be conscious of when they're developing games, just because we're going to see more and more TV. Even after this, I'm sure we'll see more and more TV adaptations of esports series.
You've got quite a busy month coming up then. Yes. 13th and 14th of June. When you open your diary, it's only 4 week pages away, and I imagine those pages are going to be pretty busy.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little bit scary that how close it is, but I think we've got a really good team in place who are collating the entries as we speak, speaking to the real world teams, real world drivers. I think from what I've seen, I can't tell you who's applied to be part of this yet until we get the announcement, which I believe is no later than is that Monday the 25th. we will be able to tell you who's racing, and that will be very exciting. But yeah, there's a good team who are collating these entries, and as always with Le Mans, there's a bit of a committee selection, and we're currently working towards that.
Thank you for your time. I do wish you the very best of luck. I can't wait to see how this all turns out. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic event.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin. It's been a pleasure.
Antonio Felix Da Costa, we catch up with you at home in Portugal. Antonio, how are you doing? Paint us a picture what's going on in your life at the moment.
How are you? It's somehow hearing your voice brings me back to the racing mood, So it's very good. I'm happy to hear you. It's all good. It's all good. I hope everything's good with you as well. It's obviously weird times, no? A weird situation, but we're all just adjusting to it. I've gone through the phase where I didn't really know how to react to it, and then I actually enjoyed having a bit of time off with all the traveling, and I've been doing 2 or more championships for the last 5 years. So I've not been more than 2 weeks in a row at home since for the last 5 or 6 years. So to have a little bit of time to just sit back, get into a routine, sleeping in my own bed every night, sleep properly, eat properly, it's been kind of cool. I've been able to train really well also, and I feel good. I feel healthy. But now, after 2 months, it's getting a little bit painful. I can't remember the last time I've been 2 months without sitting in a race car, So it's a bit weird.
Obviously, like every other driver, I guess you've never had so much time for fitness. So what can you do? Can you go out riding? Have you got a gym at the house?
No, I don't have a gym at the house, but we have a cool yard and a bit of a garden and stuff. So it's possible to do a little bit outside, which has been good. We've been fortunate for that. The first few weeks we really try to stay home. I was in New York because I was about to go to Sebring, and obviously New York has been quite badly affected. And then when I came home, I guaranteed that I stayed in the house for 2 weeks before I see my family or anything. So it's those 14 days, those first 15 days were purely in the house, doing a lot of training outside. And there's a lot you can be doing, and my trainer has given me a lot of cool things to do and exercise to do with like body weight and a little bit of interval training and stuff like that, high intensity training. So it's been okay. And now obviously with the last couple of days, we've been able to go back outside. So I've been cycling. Which I had a bike at home, which probably it's like 6 years old, and I think it didn't have more than 30 Ks on it, and I've done more in the last 3 days than in the last 6 years. So, and I'm really enjoying that because I used to suck, and now I'm getting quite good, and I've been surfing a lot as well. We've been having some good weather here. It's actually raining right now, but gone back to surfing. So it's been okay, between cycling, training, running, surfing, just resting at home, seeing the family. I can't complain too much.
And you've been doing some sim racing as well, so that's good for just keeping your head in racing and
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And also because like in sim racing, obviously like in real racing, to be precise, to hit your marks, to hit your apexes and stuff like that, it kind of comes in a natural way for me or for a pro racing driver, because I don't know, we've just been doing it for so long. But when you go back to the sim, or when you go into the sim, it's still a game, the ones we're playing. So, there's a couple of little things and tricks. I don't want to say cheats, but like tricks that you can have or know that they're going to give you an edge. So, it was pretty okay to get within a second of the really fast guys, the sim racers. But after that, it's been a nightmare to get closer. And now, after 2 months, we're finally almost there. We're like 2-3 tenths away, and it's been really fun actually to go through that process and actually wake up in the morning, and it's another thing to kind of activate your mindset, and there is a sense of progress, and there is a sense of getting better at something, and it's been pretty cool, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, I've spent so much time on my sim. I actually feel like selling it right now because I don't want to look at it anymore. I've spent so many hours on that thing. But, jokes aside, it's for sure good to like keep your mind sharp within the racing mentality, a little bit of pit stops, this and that. So it's been cool. I've done an endurance race as well. I did a 6 hours of Spa in the iRacing, the Le Mans Series iRacing, with Kelvin and Sheldon van der Linde. So it was pretty fun. We crashed.
Hopefully not on the last
hour.
lap. That's tough. But 6 hours is one thing. What do you think about the prospects of racing at Le Mans in June? A full 24-hour virtual sim race. I mean, that's just going to be crazy.
To make. I have a small confession. I did it last year already. I already did that race last year, and it was a nightmare for me because obviously I was doing a lot of racing and I didn't have enough time to practice. And then I did it with a sim racing team that I work with which is called Redline, the same as Lando Norris, Max Verstappen. And Max was in a car with a couple of Dutch guys, and I was in the other car with the Finnish guys. So they're all pro sim racers. And man, I got my ass beaten so bad. It was like 2 seconds slower than these guys around Le Mans. And I thought I was driving perfectly, so kind of bummed me out a little bit. And then now these last 2 months, I've actually came to realize where that lap time is. So really looking forward to doing it again. Obviously now, as I said, we've had more time to practice and to understand the whole thing. And we're actually going to put some time into it. So I'm really looking forward.
Well, let's just outline for those who haven't quite caught up with it, what we're talking about. The weekend of June, 13th and 14th of June, Saturday and Sunday, we are going to have a 24-hour Le Mans race, the 24 hours of Le Mans virtual. So 50 teams, 2 pro race drivers and a maximum of 2 pro sim racers in each of the teams. That is a massive field with pit stops, with weather, with Eduardo in race control. So hopefully the fans that would otherwise maybe have been on a campsite drinking beer can be in their garden drinking beer and pop in occasionally to see how the race is going.
You know what the good thing is of doing it virtually is because I'm sure we can attract a lot of non-WEC drivers and maybe F1 drivers to come and do it as well. And we can really put a nice grid together. I already know of some F1 drivers that are going to do it. So, it's I can tell for all of you listening, and you have something cool to look forward to in that weekend.
That's it for this WEC Talk. Thanks to all my guests and thank you for listening. Stay safe and we'll see you next time.